Hey everybody, and thanks for joining this live Zero Trust webinar that we've snappily titled Assessing Your Zero Trust Program with an Assume Breach Mindset. Brought to you by both Picus Security and SightGain. I'm Josh Lebowitz. I'll be your moderator today. Personally, I've put in my time over the last decade or so at Symantec, Komodo, Palo Alto Networks, Checkmarx, and ServiceNow most recently. And while I know more about Zero Trust than the average bear, I wouldn't trust me with implementing your zero trust strategy or framework. The good news is today I'll be joined by three legit zero trust subject matter experts who would definitely be the folks to talk to, from SightGain, Picus Security, and a customer and zero trust expert with direct experience using both Picus and SightGain solutions together. Now, since we've got a lot to talk about in a very limited time, let's jump right in and meet today's speakers. We'll start with Jerry Hoff, the CEO of SightGain. Jerry, welcome to the program, and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, Josh. Thank you so much. My name is Jerry Hoff. I am the CEO of SightGain. We automate security assessments such as Zero Trust. I was formerly the global security architect at a little Japanese company called NTT, if you're familiar, and I was formerly the head of security for Sony Electronics and Sony Semiconductor. It's great to be here.
Another tiny, formerly based in Japan. Well, I guess they're still Japan-based, Sony. Very nice. Nicely done. Very great to have you there here as well. Thank you, Jerry. Thanks for that. And I'd like to now introduce Gürsel Arıcı, Director of Solution Architects from Picus Security. Gürsel, the floor is yours, my friend.
Hello. Thanks, Josh and Jerry, for the intro. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. So, I believe we will have many valuable insights about the Zero Trust at the end of the day. So, my name is Gürsel, and I've been a security veteran over 2 decades, and I'm with Picus over 7 years and leading the solution architect teams globally. So, yeah, that's all.
That's a lot, just so you know. That's that's good. Not for nothing, as my grandmother would say. So thank you, Gürsel. Nice to have you here. Very, very excited to have you both here, being able to discuss sort of from a firsthand knowledge standpoint, SightGain, Picus, the benefit of putting the two of them together, which we'll get to in a second. And speaking of which, our third speaker today, who we'll hear from a bit later on in the program, although we'll meet him now, is Kevin Brink, who has spent most of his career in and around government and defense with a strong focus on zero trust. Here he is. Kevin, give us a quick intro, if you'd be so kind.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Kevin Brink. I'm coming to you with extensive DoD experience, assisted with the original team who established the program for DoD, worked in commercial and finance, and very apt at standing up programs and doing assessments. And we've been working on the automated assessment for probably 3.5 years now.
Fantastic. Automation will be a theme, one of many themes today, as you'll hear. Yeah, great to have you, Kevin. I think it's always fantastic to have obviously the perspective of, the folks from these solution providers, but also someone on the customer side who has actually, in this case, used both of these company solutions together, which is invaluable. So super great. I really appreciate that. Now that we've met our speakers, today we'll be focusing on zero trust in both theory and practice, how it differs from traditional security models, the thinking behind never trust, always verify, and the assume breach mindset, as well as security validation strategies, how to identify gaps in your zero trust security framework, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot to talk about. Obviously, with the proliferation of AI, ML, and automation, there's that word again, and the dissolution of the network perimeter since roughly before the pandemic, the ground rules have changed, and zero trust, which was a really good idea 10 years ago, is now an indispensable one in today's rapidly morphing threat landscape. What else? Little housekeeping. Please feel free to pop any questions you might have for our experts in the chat, as we'll be collecting a bunch of them for the Q&A at the end of the session. And other than that, let's get right to it. We begin with a level set on zero trust and the assume breach mindset with SightGain CEO Jerry Hoff. Jerry, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Josh. And I love what you just said. It's indispensable. So I always like to start at the high level. So let's start with the context. Josh, as you know, criminals are using the internet constantly to steal and damage everyone. And that includes you, that includes me, that includes companies and so forth. That's why we're here talking about zero trust. Is we've had multiple decades now of criminals really just having their way with everything from people to organizations, et cetera, on a continual, never-ending basis. And the reason why is we have been doing security, I would say, in the wrong way. And the evidence is the fact that we live in this world of unlimited, nonstop crime fest on the internet. So zero trust has been, I want to say up front, zero trust is not a product. It's a philosophy. It's a way of looking at the way that we design networks and what is the relationship between users and the network and so forth. And it's evolved from really brutal trial and error of essentially getting hacked. Every company on the planet has been hacked so many times. So it's essentially it's a way to kind of reset and kind of say, hey, we're doing this wrong. Let's do things right from the ground up. Now, I will mention one thing. I think I mentioned this already, but it's not a product. If some company comes to you and says, oh, we're going to sell you zero trust, ignore that. It's not a product. You can't buy it. You need to do it. It's like a healthy relationship. You can't go to somebody and say, it's like a healthy lifestyle. You can't go to somebody and say, I want to sell you a healthy lifestyle. You'd say, you can't sell me a healthy lifestyle. That requires me to go to the gym or eat right or sleep well or drive carefully or blah, 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 blah. There's all these hundreds of activities that maybe you need to do to have a healthy lifestyle. And zero trust is like that. So it's definitely a fundamental change the way that we deal with networks. So when I say it's a change, really quickly, how did we do it before? What was the original way that we're kind of changing away from? So the original way, and we're going to get into these zero trust principles in just a moment, but bear with me. The way that we have normally done it in the past is called perimeter-based security. And if you want to visualize perimeter-based security, it's very, very easy. Just envision or imagine for a moment your home network. So I think you, me, everybody, we have home networks and we have all sorts of things connected. We've got computers connected. We've got phones, printers, televisions, game consoles, home security. Maybe you've got a computer backup, storage. You got a lot of stuff, a lot of personal stuff. You got data. I mean, you got a lot of personal stuff. And then not only that, all the machines that are hooked up to your network, like your laptops, phones, et cetera, they've got cameras, microphones. You got a microphone in your TV. You probably have a microphone in your remote control, et cetera. And we hook all this kind of stuff up to a home network. And what protects us? What are we hoping protects us? Because we know on one side of the internet, you've got every criminal known to man on the internet. On the other side, you've got all of your personal things. What protects you? Well, what protects you is there's a little baby tiny firewall in your home router. And it's very, very simple. The firewall sits between your home network and the internet. And it basically does one thing. It says no connections from the internet can get in unless it was originally connections from the home network can go out. Connections originating from the internet cannot come in. Obviously, you can create connections if it's initiated from your home network, but that's basically what it's saying. And again, I'm simplifying here, but that little firewall is holding back an ocean of attacks, and we trust it because, and this is essentially in a very high level. This is what companies, governments, militaries, defense contractors all around the world were doing in the past, just assuming that some firewall was going to help them at the perimeter. And it works until it doesn't, which is like 2 seconds after you put the whole thing together. It just doesn't work. Because if you even think about your home network, the minute one of your kids downloads a game, but really happens to be a piece of malware onto their machine, it could compromise your whole network. If the bad guys take over one device, they can move laterally. They can move into your printer. They can connect into your television. They can set up shop. They can look for vulnerabilities in all of the devices that you have, and they can essentially create a home base and do all sorts of really horrible stuff. They can monitor your traffic inside your network. They might be able to turn on your camera, your microphone, etc. So it works until it doesn't. It works until it doesn't. So the opposite of that, and this is, obviously we're not here to talk about home network security, but that's unfortunately the way that we've done things in the past, which is we have all the trusted stuff in one area, and we feel like if you're connecting from that trusted area, you must be good and everything else is bad. But we now know that never works. The bad guys are going to get in some way. And what we have to do is architect things so that if they do get in, and when they get in, we need to be able to have additional security controls that will limit their ability to cause us harm.
Right.
That was all a big build up to the slide that we're looking on the screen. So if we look at the zero trust principles here, the first one is assume breach. And for the reason I just mentioned, just like, hopefully you don't get into your home network, but you would have to assume that they are already there. You want to make sure that you are designed for resilience. So when the bad guys get into your network, again, we are going to limit what damage they can do. Another zero trust principle we should mention is explicit verification. Home network, you don't really have that many users, maybe you, your husband, your wife, your kids, etc., inside of your home network. But in the company's networks that we run, you're going to have all sorts of entities. You're going to have humans, you're going to have service accounts, you're going to have third-party connections coming in, etc. And we need to make sure that we understand that those are legitimate, which means we need strong and continuous authentication. Authentication in the past was used essentially just a username and a password, and we thought that was good enough. We know that's not good enough. Username and passwords are floating all over the internet. So we need to actually do the opposite of just username and password. We have to use every possible piece of information that we can to continuously authenticate each account. We have to restrict access, just like, and I'm going to give an example of this in just a moment, but instead of assuming, every account on our internal network should have access to the file shares, or I should have access to all the internal websites, or have access to this or that, we start with thinking the opposite way, which is, all right, well, the security guard account only needs access to like the time card or whatever, the communication system, nothing else. They don't need access to the file share. The janitor account needs to really have only, maybe email access and nothing else, etc. So we really take a least privilege view, meaning we consciously assign privileges based on the role and the individual user. Mm-hmm. We monitor everything. And that means we need to have all the telemetry, and that needs to be in a useful way, being utilized. And then dynamic policy. We need obviously logging and inspection. We need automation. And I'm going to add one thing. We absolutely, and this one thing I'm about to add is extremely important. We absolutely need a feedback loop. And that really goes for any kind of security, set of principles or foundation that you want to use. If you don't have a feedback loop, you have nothing. Like basically, if you don't have a feedback loop, if you can't be continuously learning from what the bad guys are doing and then make adjustments accordingly, you're going to get sunk. You're going to get destroyed. Think about like in the real world. If we have a shop, we have a store, and shoplifters keep going to one corner where there's no camera, and they keep stealing out of that one corner, and we don't adjust, we're going to just keep getting robbed from constantly. And then all the bad guys are going to steal out of that one corner. So we need to be constantly monitoring and then updating our policy and our standard, processes to make sure that we can handle that. So that all said, let's go to the next slide.
And Jerry, I might just interrupt real quick, just saying we are running a little bit slow already. So if you can just keep going, but
speed it up. You got it.
That's
Josh.
right.
I will speed
that
it
accelerator
up.
pedal if you. And there's a ton to talk about, and I know we all get very excited about it. But let's zoom.
Yep, absolutely. So this slide, I really want to mention that zero trust has been unfortunately the victim of people defining it in all sorts of different ways, and you really want to set your sights on a standard. And the standard that I would probably say, here's some standards that you would want to turn to. The DoD Zero Trust standard is probably not for everybody. It was designed for the DoD, but it is phenomenal. It's a great document. It goes into a large number it has 45 capabilities, 152 activities inside of it. That is going to be a really great place to start learning about zero trust. CISA also has a zero trust maturity model. There is also NIST 800, the 800, I forgot exactly the number, but
I always forget myself.
207, 800, 207, etc. I should also mention that the United States federal government has also decided to standardize on zero trust. Executive Order 14028 requires all federal agencies to comply with zero trust.
And Kevin
So
can talk
let's
about
go
this.
ahead and very quickly jump into a real world example, or maybe an analogy, I should call it. Next slide, please. I want to make sure that these principles that we're talking about can kind of be visualized. So let's give a real world analogy. Let's assume we were designing an airport, right? We're designing an airport. We know that most of the folks coming into the airport are going to be good, but we also know a very small, hopefully, percentage of the traffic is going to be malicious. So we need to make sure that we design our airport assuming breach, assuming that the bad guys are going to come in. And we're going to need to make sure that we handle not just the good part, the good passengers, but the bad ones as well. So the assume breach is assuming the bad guys are going to be in. Next slide, please. So always verify. If we take a look at when you go into an airport to get your ticket, the first thing you need to do is normally go up to the desk and get your ticket, at least in the old days, right? So in order to get your ticket, you need to know your flight, you need to know your details, you need to have an identification, and that identification needs to have a picture of you so it can be compared to you. So that is three-factor authentication, something you know, something you have, something you are. But that's not just done at the ticket booth or the ticket counter. The same thing happens when you go through security. You need to show the security agent all that same data again. So you get continuous authentication as you move through the airport. When you go to if you try to go into an employee zone, they're going to ask for a badge. If you don't have one, you're not going to get in. So you're going to get authentication there. When you get onto the plane, the same thing happens. Especially if you're doing an international flight, they're going to look at your passport, ensure that it's you, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So sure that kind of continuous verification, we see that in the real world. You can see here restricting access. There are certain areas, you don't start off by saying where should the passengers go or not go. You say, what is the minimum amount of privileges that the passengers need in order to get to their flight? Next slide, please. Everything is continuously monitored. Unfortunately, we see the ubiquitous cameras all over the place. And next slide, we should have a dynamic policy. So as unexpected things happen, we change the standard operating procedure, et cetera. So a couple real world examples really quickly. Assume breach. I think we all remember the 2013 Target attack. 70 million records were stolen. That happened because the attackers got in by compromising an HVAC contractor and were able to move laterally throughout the organization. So clearly there was a perimeter defense mentality there. Always verify. 2021 Microsoft executive email compromised happened because there was it was one factor authentication on a non-production tenant. Attackers got in, moved laterally throughout the organization, got a bunch of executive emails. Restrict access. I think we all remember the 2013 Snowden event, NSA leak, where there was an overprivileged account and quite a number of documents were released. Next slide. Monitor everything. Attackers tend to stay in environments for very long periods of time due to insufficient monitoring. And then dynamic policy really applies to really almost every hack that's ever happened. We need this constant churning of when bad things happen, we need to go and make sure that we can update our policy. Sorry, I went a little bit long. I'm going to hand it back over to you, Josh.
Terrific. No worries. I appreciate, we are, it's like an accordion, we'll go a little bit longer here. We'll go a little bit shorter somewhere else. It's all good. I have a couple questions I'll just bank them for you for the Q&A, and we'll get right on to Gürsel in the next section, which is basically we've now gone over Zero Trust, giving you a little bit of a level set on, the whys. Let's now talk about some of the hows. I'll be passing the talking stick right back to Gürsel Arıcı of Picus Security. We'll talk about assessing your Zero Trust program. Gürsel, sorry we're running a little bit late, but you go, my man.
No problem. Thank you for passing me over. So first of all, sorry about my voice. So I've been done from the weekends until now and still recovering. But I want to start with a small example around this, right? So I will tie it to the Zero Trust thing. So last week I met a friend who was coughing when I met with him. So I asked, "Are you sick?" And guess the answer. The answer was, "No, it's just a tiny stuff, just coughing, fine, let's hang out." Then what happened? now I'm sick. So, never trust and always verify. So this is not clicking in every corner of our life. So it is really tough. But we can do this in our IT environment, right? So when it comes to the cybersecurity, this is the core principle of the zero trust approach, actually. So in zero trust, so every device, every user, regardless of the location, be authenticated and authorized before accessing the resources. So this is the essential actually for the zero trust, right? So, but again, this is not a specific technology, but rather a framework that requires a combination of technologies, policies, procedures to implement effectively. So it involves verifying the identities, enforcing the least privilege accesses, and continuously monitoring the anomalies. So this is how we should see these things from the zero trust angle, right? So, and the one of the key components is the technology side. You may call it a ZTNA, but there is more than that. So it is ensuring that only authorized users and device can access our resources regardless of their location. And then this eliminates the traditional concept of the network perimeter and make it more difficult for attackers to gain foothold, actually. So this slide is a little bit confusing, right? So I did it on purpose. So you are seeing a lot of things in the slide, but just imagine the fortress. To protect it, you build walls, guard towers, and more. So each layer provides a level of security. But if an enemy breaches one, they will have an access to entire fortress, right? So in cybersecurity, it is very similar actually. So we use various frameworks, standards, metrics to protect our infrastructure. For instance, we can talk about the NIST cybersecurity framework. It guides us through the identification, protection, detection, response, and recovery. On other frameworks, you can follow the similar approaches. But again, if a single breach occurs, the entire system is at risk. So while the frameworks like NIST provide a roadmap to you, the zero trust ensures that every step along the way is secure. So in essence, the zero trust is not a standalone solution actually, but a fundamental principle that when integrated with the other security measures, it creates a more resilient, effective defense against the cyber threats. So, sorry.
No worries. I appreciate you doing all this, just getting over a cold. So you are all good, my friend.
Okay. So the basic principles of the zero trust. So, restricting the access. So we should focus on the granting the only minimum necessary privilege to the users and devices. So the assume breach mindset operates under the assumption that breach is already occurred or will occur. So this is another important pillar. Continuously verify the identity and the authorization of the users, devices, or the security controls if they are working as expected all the time or not. And then the monitoring part is, you should implement a robust monitoring and logging capabilities to detect and respond to suspicious activity on time, actually. The dynamic policy is another crucial one. So I will go over one by one in details a bit. So, I have a friend on the audience side. He's an SME on the zero trust. So he always says, basically, every subject needs to have a least privilege for accessing the object. So this is a great sentence to define the restricting the access or zero trust elements. But, to achieve this goal, first we need to focus on the identification part. So the entities that attempts to your network needs to be identified. And then once you are identified, entities must be authenticated to verify the identity. You can use passwords, the multi-factor authentication, whatever required, you can choose it, right? Then authorization will come. So based on the entity and security posture, you must determine the level of access they should be granted. So it means that you need to involve the defining access policies, rules, whatever required for this, right? And the final step will be to enforce the authorized access policy to the users or devices itself. So it means that allowing it or denying it. So this is how we should approach. So assuming the breaches. So in the cybersecurity domain, actually the old adage is hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. But it's no longer sufficient. The reality is that breaches are unavoidable. So this is where the assume breach principle in the zero trust comes into the play, right? By adopting this mindset, so you will recognize that the security is not about preventing the everything, actually. So also you should think about minimizing the impact and responding effectively when they occur. So this is what we should think about. So while thinking about this breach mindset, also you should be, aware of the misconfiguration, you are granting the minimum necessary privileges, enforcing the strong password policies to enhance account security. So, and then keeping the systems up to date to address the well-known vulnerabilities. So this is the essential for the organizations, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So the monitoring. So this is another important part, right? So continuous monitoring is essential for detection and responding to the threats in a timely manner. So you need to be aware of your network, what is happening. So you need to be aware of the threat detection, vulnerability results, and the security systems that you have from the detection and prevention perspective, how they are working as expected all the time. So the solid monitoring system will be definitely required to have a strong ZTNA mindset or philosophy. So after monitoring the old things, what will happen? Static policies which remain fixed over time may not be effective in today's dynamic threat landscape, actually. That is why the principle of the dynamic policy is crucial as of today. So it will be helping us to respond to emerging threats immediately, adopting the changes in the environment. So the things may change based on the business needs or infrastructure changes and etc. So small example from my experience. One of my customer were using an IPS, and then they are testing the IPS well enough. Their score was great, but then suddenly something started happening. So during the lunchtime, IPS score was going down to 0%. So we have learned that they started to take a backup during the lunchtime over the IPS. So IPS CPU and RAM was getting higher due to the traffic on the IPS, and then IPS becomes a wire mod. So this is really crucial to have a dynamic policies. If you see that kind of things are happening, notify the people, take an immediate action, stop the backup mechanisms, whatever. So just stick with the automation. So you need to identify these type of problems and then give a response accordingly. So this is the first stage for me to explain the basics of the zero trust. Then I will be talking about a breach attack simulation part, how we can support you on that part actually.
Fantastic, thank you, Gürsel. Yeah, we've now basically covered the core pillars of your zero trust framework. We've sort of hinted at the benefits of a security validation platform. Gürsel, take a breath, maybe a sip of water, because I'm going to throw it right back to you because, again, we're tight on time to talk in brief about the benefits of simulating real-world threats with breach and attack simulation. Whenever you're ready, take it back, take it away, GA.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So breach attack simulation is, the crucial part actually. So I'm trying to move the slides, but I couldn't.
We got you. I got you here.
Okay, Perfect. Thank you very much. So, okay. So every year, as Picus, we are releasing a red report. So even you can find it from the docs site, so you can download it. So what we are doing actually, we are doing an analysis every year. We are on the malware samples and then finding the top 10 MITRE techniques, and then highlighting the key trends among the hackers actually. So this is what I put from this year actually. We are seeing that the hackers are using more stealth techniques in their tactic and techniques right now. So how we can understand their approaches while they're accessing the systems, how we can follow them in the in our environment, which tools or commands that they are using. So just download the reports, and you will see they're acting like a submarines, high-tech submarines that eliminate the targets by moving silently through the deep waters actually, right? So, and then also inside the reports we are seeing that there is a huge challenge while preventing and detecting this kind of sophisticated attacks, right? So that's why we need to have a hacker mindset to see, are we ready for the next one? Can you move it, please?
Got it.
So thank you very much. So
Sure.
this is a simple question. So just you need to ask this question to yourself, right? How secure your organization today? So do you have enough people or process or technology to properly protect your organization from these type of threats? Or do you know the weakest spots in your defense, how the hackers can breach them? So another question from the management perspective, how can you quantify your cybersecurity risk? How can you report to your board, right? So you're investing a lot to the security controls, how we can be sure that things are working properly all the time. So these are the questions. Just take a minute, just think about those things, and then if you have an answer, then you are in a good path. So this is what I can say about the approach that we are taking by leveraging the breach attack simulations. So can you move, please?
Yep.
Thank you. So this is a kind of journey, right? Zero trust is a journey, and the breach attack simulation can make this journey easy for you. So of course, there is a technology side of this journey, and then this technology side includes a lots of security stack as well, like a perimeter security controls, the next gen firewalls, IPS, web application firewalls, detection systems, EDR solutions, whatever you think about from the prevention or detection perspective will be part of this, a journey along with the zero trust, right? So it will start with the discovery. And then in the discovery thing, you need to think about who can target my organization as of today. So what is their motivation? So which techniques they are using while breaching the companies. So you need to be aware of this kind of things. And then you need to validate your security controls if they are successfully preventing or detecting this kind of activities. Then what will happen? Let's assume that you find the gaps, right? You need to prioritize based on your risks. So if the threat is not prevented, is not logged, so if the threat is highly critical for you, then you need to prioritize based on this selections. Based on every company has a different approach for prioritizing the risk, right? And then optimization part will be crucial for the companies. Then what should you do? Or how we can tackle with these challenges. So how we can help you by leveraging the breach attack simulations on this manner. So I will explain it quickly and how the things are working. So can you move to the next one, please?
I think I'm already ahead of you. Sorry about that. Take a look. Unless I'm no.
So yeah, thank you. I was trying to click.
No worries. No worries.
So it's a simple topology actually. So as I mentioned earlier, so you have a security stack, right? So in here, so we are deploying agents behind your security controls, like your golden images. So you are deploying the same security rules that you are using on the web application firewall to protect your applications, or EDR solutions maybe. So, the typical infrastructure actually. Then we are sending different type of threats according to your needs to your infrastructure through your security controls. So our agents will receive the payload or will not. Based on this information, we will be telling you, okay, this was an XSS threat that are targeting the application and successfully reached to your network through your security controls. So without being harmful to your infrastructure, so the entire security stack can be tested with the breach attack simulation tools. So from another angle, for the endpoint related attacks, we can test the MITRE framework. So we can mimic the attacks. We are running the scenarios like by creating some registry records, adding users, so deleting some registry records. So all these actions can be tested without being harmful on the endpoint side, and then you will have a prevention visibility as well as detection visibility. Then what will happen? Finding gaps is the easiest part, right? So in here, we'll be helping you on the mitigation side. So the entire system will be tested more than 25,000 different type of threats, including web application endpoint, Linux related attacks, Mac OS attacks, email attacks, data exfiltration, and then we'll be providing a specific mitigation suggestion for your security devices. Because this is requiring another expertise, right? So how to mitigate the risk? So, okay, you're using X firewall, and then I'll be telling you, you need to go to the firewall, enable the signature, and then you'll be able to stop these threats on the perimeter level. Or if you're going down to the endpoint, we'll be providing more dedicated and specific suggestions to take an action on the endpoint side. From the detection perspective, also we can provide some specific detection rules for your EDR or your SIEM solutions as well. So from the use case perspective, BAS solutions can be leveraged for many use cases. Zero Trust is definitely one of them. So we are very supportive and then helping a lot to Zero Trust approach by feeding them from the MITRE perspective, unified kill chain perspective, from the hacker perspective, actually. So you don't need to assume anymore. So you can do more with the breach attack simulations right now. But apart from that, again, so these informations can be utilized for many purposes, like making a threat hunting for the past events, emerging threat visibility, so many more. So we can discuss those things in another session, maybe.
Yes, we are running quite long. So yeah, Gürsel, if you can wrap it up, we'll get back to Jerry in a bit, just to talk about sort of putting these two things together, putting the SightGain and their capabilities together with Picus and BAS. So if you want to just wrap it up real quick, we'll get to Jerry. Jerry, I'm going to need you to scoot along as well, just because tick, 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 we're at almost 40 minutes into an hour. So we still got Kevin and the Q&A. So.
I'm done. Okay. Thank you.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. In that case, thank you, Gürsel. I totally appreciate it. I'm trying not to, there's a lot of really key stuff. It's hard to cut, frankly. So I'll just pass it really quickly. I'm going to, again, hold questions for the Q&A just because we are running long. But Jerry, if you can tell us a little bit about these two solutions, how they work together, then we'll get to Kevin, who can sort of validate all that. Validate, another word, from the customer side. So take it away. Back to you, Jerry Hoff.
Sure, thanks. I'm going to be really brief, which is uncharacteristic for me.
You say that now. Go ahead.
So basically, what you need to do is you need to automate your validation of your zero trust deployment, which means you're going to have hundreds of things that you're going to be deploying. There's hundreds, literally, quite in the DoD document, there's 150 capabilities. You need to make sure that everything is running correctly, things are configured properly, et cetera. So the best way to do that is use breach and attack like Picus to be constantly attacking your environment, determining weak spots, et cetera. And then what SightGain does is we take all of that and we map it to zero trust activities. So you're able to see exactly, all right, we failed this test, which means that this activity is incomplete, et cetera. That's all I'm going to say. I want to welcome Kevin, or I'm going to pass it over to you, Josh, but I think we should bring Kevin.
Don't steal my thunder, man. Don't steal my thunder. You stole my time. No, just kidding. I'm totally messing with you. Appreciate that. That was very brief, and I think you're sort of doing yourself a disservice, but that's okay, just because, in the interest of time. So, again, we can have SightGain and Picus talk about all day long, talk to us about how great their stuff is. Let's talk about how it actually works together in the real world. We've got Kevin Brink, who we met earlier, who is a zero trust expert who's actually used both of these technologies or both of these companies' technologies together. Kevin, thanks so much for waiting to share your experience. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kevin Brink.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So I think we have 20 minutes left with questions and answers. So one of the things that we thought about when we did the program for setting up Zero Trust is it requires continuous evaluation and continuous improvement. So how do we accomplish that? And then another thing was you have to understand your environment, your enterprise, to build your strategy and see where you need to invest or change Zero Trust, because Zero Trust is not changing out everything you have. It is making what you have better, look for the gaps, and then filling those gaps accordingly. So I think it was about 3.5 years ago, we looked at starting to do the automated zero trust assessment, because with looking at manual assessments, it takes a lot of time and resources to do that. And you can't sustain it as a process. And I know that the DoD CIO's office had put out a couple things in the Fed News April edition, or Network April edition, where they said that we really couldn't repeat this possible, as unattainable. And then in the June 2024, they said they need to automate this, which is something that everybody else has identified. So with using that, we went to SightGain at the time and talk to them about, hey, can we put zero trust into your platform because you're mapping to other frameworks? And over the last 3.5 years, we've pretty much matured that using the DoD model, because currently that was the most mature at the time. They've done the most work on it. And we took their 45 capabilities and 152 activities and put it in the platform and added, I think, and now probably 900 plus additional success criteria. So that was what we started with. And we asked them, hey, we want to do a single pane of glass when we're doing this, because you don't want to have a whole bunch of disparate locations to do this. So with SightGain, we get a single pane of glass where we can add our automated assessments. And we found out that, there's some things we have to do manually. So we're able to add those in manually and score it now. So, those are things that are required to do. And, choosing your assessment tool is, key there, because some of with Picus and SightGain, they are on a path to purposely built to do zero trust assessment now. That's on their road glide. So I've had challenges with shortcomings of breach and attack simulations where we're not able to do these assessments, because with doing it with the breach and attack simulation, you have to look at your environment and architect your deployment of the agents according to zero trust and how you would get that telemetry. So you put that out there, and there's some shortcomings, but within the platform, we're able to do a repeatable process. We're working on automating everything within the assessment, and they're on a flight path to accommodate that. So with long time, taking the manual assessment is a long path doing that. It takes a long time to do it. The automated assessment we found, is probably, the upfront time is going to be looking at your architecture, determining where you need to deploy the actors, testing that, doing your validation. There is some upfront expenditure costs, but that is a lot less than it is to try to do it manually. And the manual process takes longer. There is a cadence where you'd want to do automated and validated, with some manual red team or purple team coming in afterwards. But I think this is a obtainable, sustainable process using a breach and attack simulation that's going to be changing the way they're doing it to look at, hey, we want to accomplish a holistic zero trust assessment, so you can build your strategy and start looking at those gaps and be able to fill that.
Got it. Nice. That sounds great. Kevin, are you ready to roll for some Q&A, or do you want to? You have a little bit more to go?
I think the Q&A will drive that, because I don't want to cut it. We only got 15 minutes left, and I think that a lot of people have particular questions that they want to ask, and I think answering those questions will be better than me talking on what I think is important. Does that make sense?
Right. Fair enough. Okay. Well, I've got a couple questions for you directly. So since you've been very patient and waiting a chunk of time to have your moment, why not start with you? How do you know you're on the right track when it comes to your zero trust investments and stuff? How do you know that they're performing as you need them to? I mean, zero trust, again, it's this philosophy more than a set of technologies. And I guess every organization is different. But in your experience, how have you found, like, okay, we've spent this much money on these solutions. Are they working, to meet our zero trust standards, I guess?
So with answering that, you want to look at what your requirements are and how do we do that. In the past, you would do assessments of what's in place and so forth. But with the automated assessment, we can actually get that empirical data from the tools you have deployed and map it to the zero trust framework, whether it be CISA, DoD, whatever. But you have to have a framework to map against. You can't establish a zero trust program without adopting a framework. Right. So one of the first things is do a strategy, start mapping to that strategy and see, hey, how well do we map to it? Does this strategy meet our business needs? And if not, what do we need to do? Because the frameworks are all, guidelines, and you have to make them actionable for your business organization to say, hey, what is important for our organization and what do we look at? So some may be, maybe customer facing, how do they access and so forth. But doing those automated assessments, getting empirical data back, gives you that information that, hey, we do not have macro segmentation, and we can, once we're in an environment, we can move left and right easily. Not saying we need to micro segmentate. We're missing micro segmentation, but just the overall segmentation between classifications is missing. So being able to use that and gives you a better idea with getting the telemetry back from the assessment tools, gives you that, hey, we're missing this, we need to invest here, or do we have a tool that we can enable that capability to do that? And we don't want to have siloed where we're having seams between these environments, right? So you need to make sure it's deployed correctly to capture the intent of zero trust. Does that make sense?
I think that does. Thank you for that. A quick question, sort of hitting on the automation thing and time. You were talking about time savings and sort of how you'd need to, put some time or resources in up front. But automation, I think, is really going to save an organization, let's just say you and your organization, just a ton of time. You can't, to do the old pen test or every 6 months or whatever, those days are gone, I think. And so what areas have you found automation really to help you save time and stay safe? Again, in your experience. And then we're going to jump to Jerry and Gürsel. We've got a couple questions for those guys as well.
Well, with that automation, we can kick off these assessments ad hoc on a time frame, right? In the past, you couldn't do that. You'd have to go and assemble your team, talk to all the business units and correlate all this information. But when you deploy an automated assessment in the correct manner and have it with an enterprise-wide view on it, then you can get those telemetry back and you can give your CISO or the CSO a report card every week or 2 weeks and say, here's where we are. We've been working on this identity access and management. We've seen improvement here. And you have that report card you can get. Well, before you'd wait months and months and then get something back as a report that may or may not be valid at the time because everything's changed. Mm-hmm. So it is a much better picture and a much constant picture. So you're able to see that change versus having to wait until this assessment was done and everybody correlates their information that it may or may not be still valid, right? Because everything is changing in the environment. And that's one of the things that DoD said they can't keep on it if it's not automated. So it has to be automated to be zero trust, right? Because there's no way to keep up with continuously assessing your environment.
Yeah, I mean, you can set a very expensive team in there and spend a lot of time, and they'll come up with a very expensive answer, but it's now 3 months in the past or 6 months in the past. It doesn't really help you now. Well, in August, we were fine. It's now whatever month you pick. It's okay, December. It's a totally different environment. Things change. So thank you for those answers. And Jerry, quick question for you, sort of broadening back out to the 30,000 feet view. What does it mean to validate? We've heard about validation as well as automation, as well as a bunch of other things, but what does it mean to validate your zero trust deployment? Jerry, we've lost Jerry.
No, I was on mute.
Okay, no worries.
You want to make sure that security controls are not just present, but they are working as intended. And at the end of the day, when we say that, what do we mean it's working as intended? Well, it's keeping the bad guys out, right? And so what the great thing, that we can do with Picus and, with breach and attack simulation is we can simulate those attacks on a continuous basis. We can simulate the exact exploits the bad guys are using, and we make sure that our environment behaves as expected, that it blocks and keeps the bad guys out. Doing that on a continuous basis as the bad guys are updating their bag of tricks and their exploits, we are testing those same exploits exactly. You're constantly validating that your environment can withstand the inevitable onslaught of attacks. So, as Kevin said, we used to do this in the past by bringing in really expensive consultants who would just sit down and ask a bunch of questions to your security folks. And that's mindlessly outdated. I mean,
as fun as it is to spend that money, but yes,
yeah. Not to mention how expensive it is. And I've written those checks. I know how expensive it is to essentially bring consultants in. They just interview your staff, and they just really ask, "Hey, does this control exist, or does this control not exist?" Right? Generally, that doesn't tell you if it works. Right? The only way you know if it works is if it can do the task that you're intending it to do, which is keep the bad guys out, withstand the exploits, therefore test it. Run the exploits that the bad guys are using against the security controls, validate that they are working as intended, and like Kevin said, you get a report card on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. This is where we are in our rollout. This is where we are in withstanding the attacks and everything else. And, Picus is, the best breach and attack simulation tool that's out there on the market, the best. And SightGain can take those exact results that Picus provides and map them to zero trust. So with these two tools, you've got the replacement of what you would spend, it would be the equivalent of millions and millions of dollars on consultancies, you can get for a fraction of that cost on a continuous basis. If you're going to be doing a zero trust deployment, this is the way to do it. There is no other way. As Kevin was just mentioning, the DoD themselves and so forth have said, we need automation. There's no other way that we can validate if everything is working properly without it.
Yeah, you really can't fight, the machines with 8 humans or 10 humans or 1,000. It's just not going to, you can't afford it. You don't have the time in the day. Sorry. Okay, a quick question. We are running out of time, which I think is generally the mark of a good session. It's like we haven't finished, half an hour left or whatever. So we're coming up on the top of the hour in about 5 minutes. I wanted to ask Gürsel really quick, how can breach and attack simulations help organizations identify and address vulnerabilities that could undermine their zero trust principles, such like weak access controls, insufficient monitoring, inadequate incidents response capabilities, that sort of thing? And then we will wrap it up after this, I think.
Sure. Actually, breach attack simulations are not doing the simulations actually. So we do emulation rather than the simulation. So, you're deploying the security controls and you're expecting the things are working as expected all the time, right? So this is the hope actually. So with the breach attack simulations, then you can validate those controls are working as expected all the time by leveraging the real world attack. So especially we're sending the SQL injection attack from outside to inside to validate your BAF, or from the inside. So the users can access to, ransomware websites or C2 networks. So, you're applying the policies and then you're expecting the things are good, but the validation must be there from two perspectives. Sometimes you cannot prevent the things, right? So you should accept this because, the continuity is the key on the business side. But again, the monitoring side, you should know what can happen in your environment. So before the hackers, you need to try those tactics and techniques in your organization. And, just to talk about the MITRE. So we can talk maybe hour and hour around the MITRE stuff. So there are, more than 180 tactic techniques, sub techniques, lots of things. With the people, let's assume that you have 10 people. How you can test each tactic and techniques on the MITRE site manually, right? Even utilizing the, some scripts, open source things, and even consultancy. So you will spend a year to address the all MITRE things. So that's why you need an automation for this kind of things. And the things are changing very frequently, and then you need to be up to date against those changes, right? And then at the same time, you need to find a way without being disruptive to your infrastructure to test in the production site. So that's why the breach attack simulations are coming into the game when it comes to the zero trust discussion for validation. So this is an answer from my end. So I hope it's for everyone.
Worries. I just was hoping when you said we could talk for hours and hours about MITRE. I know Jerry's got plenty of experience. It was like, no, not you, Jerry, not you. We didn't talk today. But yeah, another session perhaps. Listen, we are right up on time. It's about 3 minutes before the top of the hour. I wanted to thank once again our zero trust experts, Jerry Hoff, Gürsel Arıcı, Kevin Brink, as well as people on the back end from Picus, Megan Schofield, Bulut Akushik, Alida Tepa, NS Chinar, and Bahar Kurt, as well as Jerry himself and Corinne Emai from the team SightGain. And to summarize, today we learned a lot about zero trust, obviously, embracing the credo, never trust, always verify, the assume breach strategy. We covered leveraging automation and automated tools like Picus and SightGain to help effectively assess your zero trust framework, find and close any gaps you might have. We talked about how breach and attack simulation automation can improve your validation, segmentation, and security posture, along with the importance of continuously validating and improving your organization's security controls based on real-world threat intelligence. Anything I missed, gents? Your last chance to say a quick hello, goodbye.
We really appreciate everybody's enthusiasm and interest in this important topic. And if you like what we had to say, let us know, and we'd love to do more.
Yeah, there is a poll, I think, at some point. So stay tuned. We're going to try and get to that. But on behalf of today's speakers, these gents and myself, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. I'd like to thank, if you'd like to reach Jerry, Gürsel, or Kevin directly, feel free to ping them on LinkedIn. I think if you look under speakers, you'll find a way to do that. And if not, LinkedIn, type these guys' names and it's not that hard. To learn more about Picus or SightGain, or to schedule a meeting or a demo, pop by their respective sites, picussecurity.com. Or sightgain.com. We'll be sending out an email link to all of the recording. We'll record this, obviously being recorded, to all registrants. So if you missed anything, or if you got a little bamboozled by the time switch, feel free to watch that, and also to share with any colleagues and peers who couldn't make it today. Other than that, I think that's a wrap. I'd like to thank everyone again for your time and interest. Thank you. And it was a lot of fun, and beating the clock as we did. And we hope to see you next time. So much appreciated. Take care, everybody. Have a great one.